The Osmo Action is a great little camera. It can do so much. It's an action camera, but it can do so much more than that. But let's not complicate things too much. I don't really love using the Osmo Action, but I use it all the time. It's the ultimate Swiss Army camera. Okay, so I said that I use the Osmo Action all the time, but that I don't love using this camera, or any GoPro, or any action camera really. Now that's maybe a little harsh, but it's true. See, for me, I love shooting videos, and I love a simple setup. At work, we have the Sony FS5 and the Sony FS7s. We just upgraded to the Sony FS7s. Fantastic cameras. They can do so much and give you great results. And when we got them, I was hoping I was going to be able to use them in a bit of a minimalist setup. But no, we went ahead and we got all the attachments, the bigger batteries, the handheld devices with them, everything. So now it's a gigantic camera. Again, fantastic results, and it's really fun to use, but I like to have a smaller setup when I'm shooting. For my own personal stuff, I use a Sony a6400. Hopefully I'm in focus right now. And I love this camera. It's small, it gives me everything I want. Sure, it's not as powerful as some of the other bigger cameras, but that's fine. I wanted a small setup, something that can shoot in 4K, something that can shoot in 1080p, 120 frames. Great. It's fantastic, it does what I want, and it's a small setup. But of course, this is even smaller. Now the quality isn't the same as the a6400. It's not that much off, but still, this a6400 allowing me to change lenses. Most times I have the Sigma 16 on there. It looks fantastic on there and I love it. Pop it on a gimbal, fantastic. But again, I'm adding to my kit, which I don't want to do. This little guy here, pretty simple. You have all the GoPro mounts that jump onto this and you're ready to use it. So I use this all the time. I don't love using it because I don't love the results all the time, but the results are pretty darn good, and that's why I use it so much. See, for me, I don't need the Osmo Action to shoot beautiful cinematic footage. I can get that with another camera. I need a camera that will always be ready to go whenever I need it, and that's what the Osmo Action is. I use it on almost all of my shoots. Now let me tell you about some of the things I really like about this camera. Now the first thing I really like about this camera is just how simple it is to use. I mean, a tiny little camera, you set it up, you press record, and you're good to go. You don't have to worry about your focus. You don't have to worry about setting your aperture. Sure, you have to worry about your ISO and your white balance and some shutters and all the kind of things that you would have to worry about with other cameras. Sure enough, you could use the auto mode, and the auto mode is pretty darn good in this. But I think for me, I really like going manual. But hey, if you like using the auto mode, this has a pretty good auto mode. But like I said, I really like the fact that it's simple to use. It's lightweight and small and can go anywhere. That's fantastic. It also comes with a nifty little cage around it so that you can hook it up to all your GoPro accessories. Now, if you had a GoPro in the past, I'm sure you had a ton of accessories, and this allows you to use them. Genius. I'm sure GoPro was not happy about that, but that is genius. The other big thing about this is the dual screen. Now, a lot of people using an action camera might say, not a big deal. The GoPro 7, GoPro 8 are fantastic cameras. They give you lots of great features just like this one, and they don't have that extra screen, but that's fine. But for me, I really like to be able to look at myself if I'm vlogging with it, which I don't do a lot, but I like to have that option. But if I'm setting it up anywhere where I want to see myself, fantastic. Pop it up, change the screen. If you're in a car, if you're on a boat, a jet ski, whatever, a bicycle, and you want to shoot back at yourself to see what you look like, if you have that screen, it makes life so much easier. We've all had a time, if you've used a GoPro, where you set it up thinking, hey, this looks going to look fantastic. You set it up, set your angle, yeah, that looks about good, and you get home and you shoot half an hour shots of your crotch or half an hour shots of your forehead the whole time. Nothing wrong with my crotch shots or my forehead shots. It's just not what I wanted. So the fact that you can look at the dual screen and set your shot and your composition is fantastic. I love that fact. Now this camera also has a great feature called Rock Steady, which essentially is a stabilizer built into the camera. course, it's not a gimbal, but it does everything electronically, and it really does a pretty good job. If you take a look at some of this footage, whether on the bike or in the car, it really does stabilize. I mean, if you go overboard, you're not going to get stabilization, but you wouldn't get that with a gimbal anyways. So the fact that this is an action camera and can give you some stabilization with rock steady, I think that's a real plus. Now, I mentioned that this thing is always in focus. You don't have to worry about setting your focus. You set the camera up, press record, and you're good to go. The fact that it has a set aperture, some people might not like that, and of course I would love to be able to adapt that to get some more shallow depth of field or something, but the fact is most action cameras don't have that anyways, and the fact that it needs a set aperture to get the shot that you want. If you want to play with the shutter and adjust your shutter and your ISO and get some cinematic footage, you can always get an ND filter, which we'll talk about a little bit later with this thing. Another great thing about this, and most action cameras of course, is that it's a tough little bugger. I mean, you can put it in water, you can get mud on it, it gets dirty, you can put it in some odd spots, it's going to get banged around, and the thing just keeps working. It's like a little brick. I mean, you can use it as a hammer. No, don't use it as a hammer. That's a bad idea. But it is very, very tough, and I love that. Now, of course, I haven't been too tough on it. I like to baby all my gear, including an action camera. But the fact that it can go in that water and get dirty, and everything gets taken care of, your shots still look fantastic, then afterwards you just clean it off and you're good to go. Okay, now let's stop the love fest when it comes to the Osmo Action and talk about some of the negative parts of it. It does have some negative parts. First one was the voice command. Of course, it's great to have that voice command. I did have some problems with it, and it is super frustrating when you get it set up and it doesn't work. For me, I had it set up in certain spots where I'm out in the public or I'm doing a shoot and I'm saying, start recording. Start recording. And people are looking at me like, why is he talking to his camera? What the heck? And then I'm getting mad at the camera. I'm yelling at the camera. No, I didn't actually yell at the camera. Actually, maybe a couple times. But the thing just wouldn't respond. Of course, it does respond sometimes, and now I think it works a little bit better. But the fact that you have voice command is great, but if it's not going to work all the time, it can be super frustrating, and it can make you look like a moron, which I'm used to, but I don't like looking like a moron when I'm yelling at a camera. Maybe I should just not yell at the camera. Sure. Now, another thing that was taken care of before I got this, because I just recently got this, was the new firmware. Now, the new firmware, the big thing about this was that it took away that lag in there, so that if you're looking at the camera, you're a second behind or half a second, whatever it is, it's frustrating. Now, apparently it's a lot better now, and I would say there is still a little bit of lag, but for the most part, it's pretty on par. I mean, even if you look at the GoPro, I find there's a little bit of lag as well. And this earlier, apparently the lag was worse. So that would be really frustrating. But luckily, I got it with the newer firmware. Now I keep the firmware up to date so that if improvements come, I'm going to have that and it's not going to be a problem. But the lag can be a real problem if you have the older version of the firmware and you haven't upgraded yet. Just upgrade it. Now, knock on wood, I've never had a problem with this thing and water. I use it in the water all the time. I think it's really, really cool. And I love the fact that you shoot this underwater and get some really good footage. I love the slow-mo underwater. It looks kind of neat. I just think it's kind of a cool feature. But other people have had issues with water getting into the camera. And once you get any water in the camera, forget it. It's going to ruin your camera. Now, whether that's getting in through the battery port or the SD port, I'm not sure. I'm very, very careful when I put that battery in to make sure it's nice and sealed tight. There's that little elastic, that little orange band that goes around there. Make sure you don't play with that. Make sure it's in nice and tight so no water's getting in there. I did have one issue, and it happened recently. I had an ND filter on this, which I loved using. I'll talk about it in a second. And I had to switch out the ND filter with the regular cap over here. Now, the lens cap, it's great. You had it screwed on. But I did notice when I got back the next day, I went to go shoot, there was some moisture in there. Took the lens cap off, thinking it was in there, but no, it wasn't. It was actually in the lens itself, which I found a little bit weird. It could be the fact that I was in a air-conditioned house and I came out to a hot spot, but it lasted for a while, and I actually had to leave it out in the sun a bit to dry it out. And then it seemed to go away, which is great, but that literally just happened today. I went out to shoot a little bit more footage for this video, which was a little frustrating, and it kind of scared me a bit, thinking that moisture got in there, but it seemed to be taken care of now, and that's okay. Now, I did mention that I bought an ND filter for this. For me, I've used ND filters for everything. I use it for my main cameras. I use it for the Mavic Mini. I loved using ND filters. It allows you to get that cinematic footage. Now, I did say I don't really need to get cinematic footage out of this camera, but I love to have that option of getting my shutter speed down so that my shots can look better, especially when I slow things down. Now, I bought a set from Freewell. Actually, it's just one. Sorry, it's not a set. And this one is the ND32. I use ND32 more than any other ND filter out there. I'm not sure what it is. I just love that. It gives me just enough protection from that light and allows me to lower my shutter. And anything lower than that, maybe 16 I will use sometimes, but the 2s, the 4s, the 8, I just don't find it's enough for me. If I'm using my more cinematic cameras, sure, I'll use that. But for something like this, I just wanted something basic. And this worked really well until it didn't. This actually just broke earlier today as well. I was taking this cap off to put the ND filter on, and the glass broke. Not a big deal, didn't cut myself or anything. It is glass if you're wondering. We're wondering if it's plastic or glass. It is glass. You can hear it rattling around there. So I have to return this now to Freewell to get another one. Freewell products are fantastic. I've never had a problem before with any of their filters. I'm sure they won't give me a hard time about returning it because I really didn't do anything wrong. I didn't touch the glass or anything. It just kind of popped right out of there and then it snapped. So maybe I just got a bad filter. And that happens, so I'm not really blaming them. And I'm sure that'll be okay in the future. Now, I did say I use this all the time, and it's true. My favorite thing to do with this camera is just to set it up and let it pick up the action. If I'm going for a hike, I'll set it up between a tree, someplace kind of nice, and I'll just walk by it. I'll let the action happen in front of the camera. I'm not moving it, I'm setting it, and I'm forgetting it. And I love that part. The slow motion on these cameras are awesome. I would love it to do a little bit higher slow motion in 4K, but hey, it's a simple little camera. I don't expect. The fact that it does 60 frames at 4K is fantastic. 4K looks pretty good. Slow it down, great. But the fact that it does Full HD 1080p at 240, that's amazing. Now, the footage isn't as crisp as other cameras, but the fact that it's such a tiny little camera with a little sensor and it gives you that slow motion is amazing. And the fact that you have so many different options, 120, 90, that's great. I love playing around with it. And you can also, if you don't want to shoot 4K, you don't want to shoot Full HD, you can shoot 2.7, other options, that's great. I love the fact that you have so many options with this tiny little camera. Anyways, I really do like using this camera. Sure, I don't love it, but I use it all the time, and I'm going to continue to use it. It's a real valuable part of my kit, and I think it's great. This is probably like my 4th or 5th DJI product that I just got. I started with the Osmo Pocket, which I love. I use it all the time, and slowly started building stuff. I'm not sure how that happened. Maybe there's a group that we can all join to talk about the fact that we're buying too many products from DJI. I'm not sure what that group would be, but maybe we need some kind of help group. What do you think? Will you join it with me? Yeah? I also have the Mavic Mini, which I just got. I have the Ronin SC, which I think is fantastic. So there's a lot of products that I'm getting from DJI. At first I didn't have any. Now I have a bunch. Maybe too many. I'm not sure. Anyways, let me know your thoughts on this camera. Let me know your thoughts on this camera compared to one of the more recent GoPros, GoPro 7, GoPro 8. Those are great cameras, and I've used them before, and I think they're fantastic, but I really do like this one as well, and I love the fact that there's some competition out there for the GoPro. So, leave me some comments. If you liked the video, give me a thumbs up. If you want to subscribe, that would be fantastic. Anyways, I really enjoy making these videos, and I really appreciate you taking the time to watch, and have a good day.